This is Block 9, the Liberal Establishment, Section 7, Vietnam, with the section Vietnamization. Nixon runs for president in 1968, promising peace with honor in Vietnam, meaning that the United States was going to look to get out of Vietnam, but with its honor intact and leaving peace behind it. And what Nixon meant by peace was a anti-communist South Vietnam that was no longer threatened by the North. And he promised the American people that he could end the war much more competently than Hubert Humphrey could. He would run the war more effectively than Lyndon Johnson did, and that American troops would come home as soon as peace was established. And he was the guy to bring about this peace. So there was clearly an idea in South Vietnam that American troops were not going to be there forever. And there's also no hope that the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong are ever going to go away. So Nixon thinks his idea is what he calls Vietnamization. He wants to put the war back in the hands of the South Vietnamese. It was their country, after all, that the United States was trying to defend. And what he did was he started a very, very expensive program of preparing the South Vietnamese, the ARVN, the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, to take over for American troops. 540,000 American troops would slowly be pulled out, and they would be replaced in the field by South Vietnamese troops. These South Vietnamese troops would be supplied by the United States, armed by the United States, trained by the United States, as you see here in these pictures. And with all of this American support, the United States would give ARVN everything except for permanent manpower. And that was promised to the South Vietnamese, that the United States taxpayer spent, hundreds of millions of dollars building up this army in South Vietnam with an attempt, with the idea behind it at least, that it would have to defend its own soil as American troops were slowly withdrawn from the country. This is a fundamental shift in the Cold War. That if you remember back to Truman and Kennedy, that the American people would support anti-communism wherever it was. The American people would, as Kennedy said in his inaugural, pay any price and bear any burden. Nixon informed the world that that was no longer the case. Now, Nixon said that the United States would honor all of its prior commitments around the world. That if the United States had a commitment with you, like it had a commitment with NATO in Europe, it had commitments with Central Asian countries in a treaty called CENTO, it had agreements with Southeast Asian countries in a treaty called CETO. Nixon said, if you already have an agreement with the United States will honor that agreement. But if you do not have such an ironclad agreement, then you're going to have to fight your own war without the expectation of large numbers of American troops. Nixon's doctrine promises aid, money, training, supplies, but limited American boots on the ground. That's Nixon's doctrine. That Vietnamization and Nixon's doctrine kind of go hand in hand. They're sort of the same thing. That the United States would pay for other countries to defend themselves with money, but the United States would be slowing down its commitment to defend other countries with our blood.